Hi, I'm Snez, personal trainer, healthy lifestyle coach, and your guide to feeling your best. This podcast is a segment from my weekly radio show, Wellbeing Wednesdays, broadcast live on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. It's all about sharing real, practical tips to help you move more, eat better, and live healthier without the overwhelm. Let's dive in, shall we? Coming up next, going to chat about are all food rules bad? Now, the thing is that there are so many rules, and if you've been on a health journey for any length of time, you've probably come across a lot of different conflicting advice. Don't eat after 7 o'clock. Carbs are definitely the enemy. Only eat clean, never snack, always snack. Intermittent fasting is the answer. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. High fat, low fat, high carb, high protein. There are so many rules, and there are so many rules that are also quite unhelpful. That is absolutely true. They're rigid, they can be fear-based, and they often come in place of control rather than actually looking after yourself and caring for your wellness and taking into consideration what's important to you, what your cultural background is, what sort of lifestyle you live in or want to live in, and it kind of removes all of that, and instead we can treat food like a moral issue where it's good or bad, and it makes us good or bad, and then it creates guilt, it creates stress, and it creates an obsession or a hyper-focused situation around food, and that's definitely not helpful and something that I do not promote at all. However, not all structure is bad, and there are a few simple guidelines. Rather than calling them foods, we can call them guidelines or anchors instead of rules that can actually help you feel more in control and support your health in a way that feels freeing, not restrictive. Because when we do have some guidelines or some anchors around our food choices, it eliminates the decision making and the continuous questioning of our decisions. So it allows us to feel we have more freedom in our lives because some of those anchors are in place and we don't question them. We just follow along and we choose from the place with those guidelines that we do have. So we're going to talk through today why we love food rules to start with, and even when they don't work. So the truth is that when we feel overwhelmed, rules feel safe. They give us something to follow. There's that black and white path in a world that can be so full of grey. And so it can feel good to have some rules. And I know when people come to me to get some help to improve their health and fitness and their wellness, people are always asking for rules. It's like, just tell me what I can and can't do. And I struggle with that because that's not how I like to teach healthy habits. I do love to provide education so we can understand and then we can make choices for ourselves and what feels good for us. But the truth is that sometimes food rules do work. And when we feel overwhelmed, it is definitely a good idea to put some things in place. Now, the thing is that they just give us something to follow. But the thing is that when the rules become too strict, we know that they rarely last, and they don't teach us to listen to our body. They just teach us to follow a particular script or a plan or a program rather than finding out some education about the real facts around how our bodies work and what our bodies need, and then allowing us to look after ourselves from there. And the thing is that when the rules are super strict, when life gets busy or we break a rule, what happens then? You just feel bad, you feel like you've failed, and then that guilt starts to spiral and we start to feel worse about ourselves, which then can lead to making even worse decisions in that particular moment or in that week until we sort of hit that sort of rock bottom again and we need another reset because we're now feeling so terrible. So we want to avoid, as I said, just that feeling of failing when our rules are too strict. So there are some rules that we should definitely get rid of. So the no carb rule, that can 100% go. The no chocolate rule that can absolutely go, that you must eat every 2 hours, which there's so many variations of that. But you need to choose what works for your body, whether that's more regular meals or whether that's 3 meals a day. It's what works for your body and your lifestyle. And the other one that I really dislike that you can completely get rid of is the cheat meals. And it implies that you're just about to be bad or you're being bad. And food isn't a moral issue. It's just food. And yes, you can eat a burger and still be absolutely healthy. So moving away from the cheat meal, I think is really important, especially when we're having cheat weekends, because then what I find is that people are making fabulous choices during the week and then it just goes terribly bad over the weekend and can actually put us quite a few steps behind when we are trying to make improvements. So they're the top ones that I would definitely be trying to remove out of your vocabulary and out of your life. But there are definitely some basic rules or guidelines or anchors that are worth keeping. The ones that are going to help assist, they're the ones that are sustainable, and the ones that if you step away from them every so often, they're not that strict that you're going to feel that you've completely failed. So I think of these more as guidances or principles because they offer some structure without any real pressure. So my top 5 ones that to keep are making sure you're including protein at each meal. It's not just being about high protein, but it's about getting enough protein in your diet. And protein helps with satiety, with energy, with blood sugar regulation, maintaining muscle mass as we age. It assists in so many different ways. So including protein at every meal is definitely something that I would be including. Making sure that you are picking whole foods over processed foods is another one that we should be working towards. Now, this should be a general rule and something that we should be aiming to achieve at every opportunity, but you don't need to be perfect with this one. The more you build your meals around real food, things such as veggies or fruit or whole grains, quality proteins, healthy fats, predominantly from plant-based sources, the better your body is going to function, because processed food is addictive and it will make you feel hungrier, and it will send signals to your body so that you overconsume, and leads to all sorts of health-related issues further down the line. So wherever you can, the word is prioritize whole foods over processed ones. It doesn't say, and I'm not saying to you to eat only whole foods and no processed foods, but we want to prioritize it as best as we can in every moment. And that's having a real deep dive into and having a think of, well, what could I actually turn into more of a whole food option? And it's when I talk about whole foods, it's not about eating some really irregular things that you're not accustomed to eating, like quinoa or frika or maybe even tofu. Sounds a bit much. It's more about having a look at, okay, well, I'm eating white bread. I could definitely eat something less processed than that. Or I'm having a flavoured yogurt, and that's a lot of processing in that. Maybe just a plain Greek-style yogurt where I can flavour it with my own local honey and fresh fruits. Well, that is a huge positive substitution for a very similar snack or food option. The next rule that I think is definitely worth keeping and worth practicing and getting really good at is making sure you're eating when you are physically hungry. Now, that can sound simple, but it's like, okay, well, what's so good about that or interesting about that? Well, the point is that reflect on how often you actually feel hungry before you eat. And a lot of the time, it's not very often. A lot of the time we're eating because it's the time of day. So it might be 1:30 and that's lunchtime traditionally, or 6 o'clock and that's traditionally dinner time, or it's morning tea time at work, it's an allocated break, or maybe it's just out of pure habit. You get up and the first thing you do is eat, which is actually a good thing to do, mind you, but just bringing to the point, check in with your hunger, get curious, check in with your body and just ask the question, am I really hungry? Or is it just a craving or a distraction, or I'm eating out of timing or habit? And it's a really important question to ask, because the reality is if we are not hungry, at that point in time, then we shouldn't really be consuming any food. If the body's not actively asking for food through hunger signals, then we can probably delay that snack or that meal. And then I know what you're thinking out there. You're probably thinking, well, I probably wouldn't get hungry after breakfast or after lunch until, if I'm eating lunch at 1 o'clock, I'm probably not hungry again until, 7 o'clock at night. And you've told me that I need to include an afternoon snack because it's good for us. And the point is it is. But what that's also showing you is that your quantity of lunch is too large. And I took my son out for lunch just on Monday for his birthday. And I knew when I sat down and ate the lunch, it was just beautiful. We're out at a cafe, but it was way too much for me. I could see it. And it was eggs on a bagel with avocado and whipped feta and this most amazing seed dukkha type of sprinkles over the top. And it was just way over the top. And I ate it, and it was like about 12:30, and it was 7 o'clock at night, and I wasn't rushing to make any dinner, and neither was my son. It was just the two of us, and everyone else in the house was like, what are you guys doing? We're hungry. But I knew there and then that was just way too much food for me. And if I would eat my normal meal at 12:30, by 3 o'clock, I would well and truly be hungry. So that's something that we can make adjustments for, but it's something to be mindful of, that if we're not hungry, we should probably reduce our quantities so we can cause hunger, or just wait until you actually do feel hungry and then respond to hunger. The next rule that I think is very well worth keeping when we are talking about helpful rules to manage our food intake and our healthy habits, and that is stop eating when you are satisfied, when you are at that 80% full and you feel like you have just had enough, rather than eating until you feel completely stuffed. So that is something that this one takes practice, and you don't need time to finish everything on your plate. You just need to eat slowly and give your body time to catch up with your brain. Now, that's a bit of a thing. There is a delay from the time that you are eating to the time that your body registers how much food you've actually had. So stopping at 80% full allows your body space to digest, or your stomach space to digest food, which in that process there is some expansion, so that you don't get to the end of the meal just feeling completely overly full. So that is one thing that is really important, because what it does lead to is it leads to eating the correct quantity of food rather than overeating. So we want to make sure that we are going to stop at 80% full, and that will therefore mean either putting less on your plate to begin with, or not feeling like you need to finish everything on your plate. So come to that sort of agreement or understanding. If you feel that overeating is a bit of what you do, especially at a particular meal, whether that be lunch, whether that be dinner, think about ways that you can reduce that intake. So you may use a smaller plate, or you may just serve up less, or you may be quite comfortable to push the plate away and pack up any leftovers for lunch the next day if you feel like you have had enough. And the last rule that I will say that I think is really quite important is to take your time with your meals and feeding yourself and nourishing your body. So making a meal a moment, not rushing throughout your day. And this isn't about, sitting at a beautiful table and candle lights every night, but it's just about slowing down. It's about putting your phone away. It's about moving away from your laptop or your screen, sitting down. It's about chewing your food, tasting your food, and being present. And you'll be amazed at how different your food will feel and taste when you actually engage with the moment of feeding yourself. And you'll be also surprised to see how you will feel satisfied a lot quicker than when you are distracted and not actually paying attention. So taking the time to make a moment out of nourishing your body, I think, is really important. And look, this is something that I do quite well at certain meals. And then there are certain snacks and meals that are completely on the run, but it's just a gentle reminder. So The final thoughts are that, yes, most rules we've been taught around food are rigid and are stressful, but when you replace them with some thoughtful habits and a flexible structure, it can actually be quite empowering and can be quite good for your health. And the goal is not to follow food rules, but to use them as guidelines and to build a relationship with food that feels calm, that you feel confident, that you know what you're choosing because you've learned what are the best things to put together and it feels sustainable. So when you're looking at the food rules, the main ones that I'd recommend you keep are including protein at every meal, prioritizing whole foods, eat when you're actually hungry, stop when you've at 80%, you just feel satisfied. Don't rush through meals. Take the time to enjoy and experience the meal, and you will find that you can then start to move away some of those strict rules and start to make sort of more conscious decisions around your food. Thanks for joining me on this segment from Wellbeing Wednesdays, as heard live on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who might find it helpful and subscribe so you never miss a show. Want to catch the live broadcast? Well, you can tune in Wednesdays from 12 till 2 p.m. on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM, or find my info on Wellbeing Wednesdays with Snez, the Facebook group. Take care, stay healthy, and remember, it's the little choices every day that create big changes. Talk soon.